This episode of Test Drive is brought to you by Elmec and their EV Duty Smart Home Charger.
Well, friends, it wasn't that long ago that we drove the 2022 Volvo XC40 Recharge. Even though this one looks pretty much identical to the one that we drove back in November, it is a different VIN. This is a later production model, and we're also using the most recent software for this vehicle as of filming this here at the beginning of March. So we're going to be going over what has sort of changed with the software updates on the XC40 Recharge. If it's still a vehicle you should be considering if you're in the market for a full electric, and sort of my impressions of this vehicle in the winter. When we drove it in November, it was starting to get cold, and we've had some pretty cold weather here in Quebec during the week that I've had this. So we can talk about how this compares to a more fall experience when it comes to the XC40. Now, like I said, we've updated this to the latest 10 version software, 1.10. Now, the previous car that we drove, I believe, was on 1.6. So there's been a number of updates since then. One of the biggest changes is something that I complained about when we drove it last time. But essentially, the updates have added some decent features to this vehicle, which is one of the benefits of having one of these newer electric vehicles. I mean, it's not limited to these cars. Any car manufacturer can do over-the-air software updates, even if it is a gas vehicle, but we seem to see that more now with the electric vehicles. So with 1.7, the update a lot of people said that I should have had on the previous 2022, it added a little snowflake icon to the vehicle, which will tell you if you're driving in winter conditions, which means the range will be decreased, even though this vehicle did not display the range. And they also added, finally, the Volvo Range app, as well as SiriusXM radio. Now, the Range app is just what it sounds like. It's an app. So you have to open it on the main infotainment screen to see the estimated range, and it gives you the ideal range. I guess if it's the ideal temperature with no air conditioning, no heat or anything on, maybe you're going down a hill, this car says it'll do 450 kilometers. And then at the bottom end, the least amount that it will do is about 220 right now. And since driving this in these temperatures, I'm seeing between about 240 kilometers to about 300. So keep that in mind. It's been, between about minus 10 degrees Celsius. Now it's about 1 degree Celsius. So it changes quite a bit depending on how cold it is. So having that there is nice. The only thing though, it doesn't show in the driver screen. It's only available if you have the app open or if you're on the home screen for the main infotainment system. It shows you the range there. Now I know a lot of people, so many people commented to say that you could just push the little voice button on the steering wheel and ask Google what your range is. Because yeah, that's much simpler than just looking down at the screen and seeing 240 kilometers. It is much more user-friendly to have to push a button to ask a command. I don't know why you guys are apologizing for having that feature. Put it on the screen. It's still not easily accessible. So I'm still not thrilled with this update. Now, version 1.8 and 1.9 added some, essentially just improvements to the charging system. The overall range was improved slightly, as well as some of the safety systems. And then version 1.10, which we're using now, has added some extra safety tech or changed some of it a little bit. We now have the steering support with lane keeping aid, which has been improved a little bit. There's also the leading vehicle notification system. We've seen this on a number of vehicles. Essentially, if you're stopped somewhere, the car will detect if the vehicle in front of you has pulled away in case you're not paying attention, which you really should be. So it's new, and that was added for the 2021 model years because the 22s like this already had it. And it's also improved the sensitivity for the automatic rear braking system, as well as the interior ambient lighting. They say that the startup and shutdown sequences for it have become a little smoother. So some small updates there. It is nice that both models have gotten the update, the 2021s and 22s. So whether you bought a new one or one that came out first, you should have all of those features. So we'll see down the road, if I'm able to book this again, maybe in a year or two, to see what software improvements have come. But for the most part, I think the major things that they have changed, aside from adding SiriusXM and the Range app, is traction has also been improved. Now, we will talk about that on the road because it has been a little icy here, has been slushy as well. So I can give you an idea of how this vehicle will perform in the winter, and if there really is any improvement from the one that we drove before. But I do want to take it on the road because essentially everything else is the same on this. It still uses the same twin electric system, providing a total output of 402 horsepower, 486 pound-feet of torque. It still uses the same 78 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery with 75 kilowatt-hours usable. and everything else that you would expect from this subcompact luxury crossover. But I want to talk about how it performs on the road in the winter and why you might want to be considering the 2022 Volvo XC40 Recharge. It is nice here in Quebec. It has warmed up considerably, which is nice, although it still uses up a lot of electricity when you're driving an electric car, because it, even though it has warmed up, is still a bit chilly. So when we completed our 100 kilometer test loop in this bad boy, which was about minus 10 degrees Celsius still, completed it in 23.7 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So kind of average for a lot of the newer electric cars that we've driven with four-wheel drive. Not overly unexpected, but when you think about it, I mean, 23.7 kilowatt hours, you're going to get about 300 kilometers of range with it, given how small the battery is or how large it is. So it sort of makes sense based on the estimated ranges that I've got, and I can finally see that now. Yay! The car says range 270. So I'm curious, if we were to ask Google, is it going to be the same thing? What's my range?
You can drive for about 270 kilometers with the remaining charge.
Oh wow, that's so much easier than just looking, glancing, not even having to take my eyes off the road for more than a millisecond down at the screen and see that. Good stuff. So anyway, let's talk about how this vehicle has changed, or at least my opinion, because, you know, realistically, I haven't really driven too many vehicles since we drove this back in November. You know, some of the electric cars we've driven throughout the last little while included the Mustang Mach-E. We just did the 2022 Kia Niro EV, but it's a front-wheel drive only vehicle. I also talked about my Ford Focus electric, so there's been a number of electrics that I've done. I also drove the Ioniq 5, and I think that's going to be one of the more interesting vehicles for this year, both the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6, because they're new, they're nice looking, they're all-wheel drive, and they offer some interesting designs, maybe a little out there, a little funky. I do like the Kia design a little bit more than the Ioniq, but both could suit somebody's needs. One of the nice benefits of driving this is it looks exactly like every other XC40 that's on the road, except the front grille doesn't exist. And this one actually has some extra bits on it. It's interesting, if you look, we do have the chrome, the sort of polished aluminum and brushed aluminum that goes around the outside of the vehicle. I think it looks kind of nice. So some small design changes from the previous one that we drove, but still, it's a very functional subcompact luxury crossover. And I do like the space on this. Like, this is a good size vehicle for me. I would be very, very comfortable using this as a daily driver. I've got plenty of space up here. I always find the Volvo seats are incredibly comfortable, so I'm very happy driving this around. My daughter has tons of room in the back seat, so really there's no issues overall when it comes to the space on this vehicle. And that's the thing, I mean, this vehicle has only gotten a little bit better in terms of software updates since we drove it last. The range is a nice thing. SiriusXM being built in is also a nice thing. But for the most part, I mean, it's still the Volvo XC40 that we drove before without too much different, right? You know, that's one of the nice things about being able to drive it in a different season, is I can kind of see how it performs in the winter. Aside from the range, there isn't too much that is concerning. Obviously, it's four-wheel drive, but I do notice that the traction still, I don't know if it can be improved, but it is similar to something like my Ford Focus, where when you're coming up to a patch of ice, whether you're slowing down or speeding up, you have your foot on the accelerator a little bit, the car, I don't know, gets a little confused. So, for example, I'll come to a little patch on the road that's not that nice. If I'm slowing down, the wheels will essentially just slide right through. So it doesn't quite know how to anticipate that or know how to deal with it, whereas normal gas vehicles, I really don't ever have that issue. But for the most part, you know, I've been enjoying my time with this, not only because gas is $2 per liter here in Quebec, but because, you know, for the most part, it is an enjoyable car to drive. It's comfortable, it's smooth, you know, the four-wheel drive system works well. The winter tires on here have been good. You know, like I said, we've had a little bit of rough weather, so it's been nice to be able to test it out. But realistically, this is going to be a very solid vehicle for those who are looking for something that is fully electric and, I'd say most importantly, doesn't look like it's too out there. It's one of the major selling features of this Volvo. So there's a lot of reasons to like it. Not just the energy economy, not just the design, not just the range. everything is pretty good about it. So I do like it. I do like driving it, and it would definitely be one that I would consider. You know, I haven't driven really the Ioniq 5 or the Kia EV6 for an extended period of time. You know, the Ioniq 5 I just did really for an hour and a half or so. But they are nice cars. There's a couple flaws about them though. Whereas something like this, I think this would probably be the one that I would take. It's really between this and the Mustang Mach-E. I really do like the Mustang. I like the look of it. I like how it performs and a lot about it. And like the Mach-E, this isn't the perfect electric vehicle. So both of them have their small flaws, which make it compelling to compare between the two of them because they aren't quite perfect. But if you have any questions about the Volvo XC40 Recharge, please let me know in the comments below. This is part of our seasonal updates on vehicles, so I hope you've enjoyed it. If you wanted to know a little bit more about the XC40 Recharge, you can watch the video that we did back in November. Not only has it been linked throughout the video, but it will also be at the very end, so you can click through there. So again, if you have any questions, leave a comment below. I hope you enjoyed the video. Give a thumbs up if you did, and also consider subscribing to our channel if you haven't done so already. Until next time, thanks for watching, and take care.